Happy Easter, everyone. Today is such a special day, not just because it is Easter, and that is enough to make it special, but today just so happens to be the 22nd birthday of X Church. 22 years ago today, this church got started, and it looks a whole lot different today. In fact, I brought a picture. It's one of my favorites I want to throw up of our very first Easter. Just look around right now. We got people in overflow. Come on, can I just tell you, God is good. Man, God has done something incredible over the years, and I just want to welcome you here to X Church. If you're a guest, if this is your first time here, whether a friend brought you, a family member, maybe you got an invitation, you came to the egg hunt, we're so excited that you're here today. And I just want you to know this, no matter where you are on the journey of faith, whether you're someone who believes in God or someone who's like, I don't know if God's real and I'm not sure about Jesus, can I just say, I am so glad that you're here. This church is for you. And you don't have to believe what I believe to belong here and to find community and find a family here at X Church, okay? And so I just want to say, if this isn't a regular part of your rhythm, if you're just curious, I just want to invite you back next Sunday and just continue that journey with us. You're welcome here. Now, I love Easter for so many different reasons. I mean, springtime is a big one, and I am so grateful for the warmth and the sunshine. How about you? Just for today, thank you, Lord. Thank you, God, for giving us a beautiful day here in Ohio. It is rare, and we'll just take it. I love the grass is turning green again, and the trees are starting to bud. It's like life is starting to emerge. And I don't know if you guys have any traditions in your house, but in our household, there is a tradition around Easter. I don't know if any of you parents do this, where my wife throughout the years has always given Easter basket full of goodies to our daughters growing up. I'm curious, how many of you parents do Easter baskets for your kids? Raise your hands. Okay, oh, that's a lot of you, right? Now, I think we need to talk about this for just a moment, okay? Because some of you are you're not gonna know this, but I thought that when my kids grew up and moved out of the house, we could stop doing Easter baskets. Wrong, he's right, wrong. I did, call me crazy, call me dumb. But I just thought, and it is kind of funny to me that the two biggest holidays on the calendar that are connected to Jesus are absolutely the most expensive holidays. I don't know why that is, Christmas and Easter. But I thought when my kids grew up, became adults, moved out, got married, had their own kids, we wouldn't have to do Easter baskets anymore. No, we went from doing 2 to 5. I have a 27-year-old son-in-law that's still getting an Easter basket. Why? For heaven's sake, why, woman? Easter is, it really is such a great time of year, and maybe if your regular rhythm isn't to go to church but show up on Easter, you're probably really familiar with the Easter story. But there's one part of the Easter story that always kind of perplexed me. It always, I don't know, in a way, it's kind of hilarious. Now, the gospel writer named Luke, who was a physician who took kind of an account of what happened in the story of Jesus, he tells us something really interesting in his narrative about Easter. He actually tells us one of the first things that Jesus did after he was raised to life. Now, this might surprise some of you, but the first thing that Jesus did, Luke tells us, after he was raised to life, is that he went for a walk. He just went for a walk. I found this kind of funny. The first thing that Jesus does, I don't know, maybe he had restless leg syndrome, maybe lying there in the state for hours and hours, days, like everything kind of locked up and stiffened up. But I find it interesting that the first thing that Jesus does is go for a walk, because most people, when you have the biggest event and the biggest moment of your life, it's like, what are you gonna do? Everybody's like, I'm going to Disney, right? Not Jesus. He decides to take a walk on a dusty road. It's kind of crazy. Now, I thought to myself, maybe he's just trying to get his steps in. You had to make up for the last couple days. How many of you track your steps? Raise your hand if you track your steps. Okay, I don't know if you use your Apple Watch or just your iPhone, or I don't know if Android can even do that. Maybe it can, I don't know. I apologize, I don't know. I'm not an Android person. Or maybe you're one of those elite folks that has the big old Garmin on your watch that you just virtue signal everybody like I'm actually better than you and healthier than you. I don't know if you're one of those people that like to track your steps. I will say this. If you ever struggle to get your steps in, I have the perfect personal trainer for you. It's my wife. Now I say this, not because my wife even tracks her steps, because she doesn't, right? And she doesn't track her steps, and maybe she doesn't get the biggest step count in on a regular basis. However, if you're struggling and you want a new goal, you want to kind of get healthy, here's what you do. You hire my wife, but you have to pay and take her to Disney with you. You spend one day at the Disney parks with my wife, I promise you'll hit 30,000 steps. That's like, she's a trooper, all right? She'll work you. But Jesus, I don't know if he's just trying to get his steps in, I don't know what he's doing, but the first thing Luke tells us is he takes a walk. And he goes to catch up with a couple of people that were actually leaving Jerusalem on the very day. In fact, let me read this to you. It's Luke chapter 24. How many of you wonder if I can do this? Walk on this and read. We're gonna find out. Luke 24 verse 13, it says, now that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. And as they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along them. But they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, what are you discussing together as you walk along? And it says that they stood still, their faces downcast. And one of them, named Cleopas, asked him, are you the only one who's visiting Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that have happened there in these days? Let's pause for a moment. Cleopas is kind of like confused. Is like, why Jesus doesn't know what's happened in Jerusalem? You gotta understand that even though there's no social media, there were no news outlets back then, if there was a Roman crucifixion in your city, everybody knew about it. I mean, it was the biggest news, okay? And they would just kind of, as Jesus walked through the streets of Jerusalem, I mean, everybody, word of mouth, everybody knew something was happening. Rome was doing something. And when Jesus was killed on a hill outside of Jerusalem with two other criminals, everybody knew it. Everybody saw it. Rome made sure that it was a massive spectacle. And so Cleopas is going, bro, you living under a rock. How are you the only one that doesn't know what happened? I love Jesus' response. Jesus said, what things? Jesus said, what things? What are you talking about? What happened? Maybe Jesus just wanted to hear it, what they would say. And they said this, about Jesus of Nazareth. They replied, he was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it's the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early in the morning, but they didn't find his body. They came and told us what they had seen, and they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women said, and they did not see Jesus. This whole entire moment I find really fascinating. The thought that Jesus, the moment he's raised from the grave, that he doesn't visit his best friends, Peter, James, and John. He doesn't visit all the rest of the 11 who'd spent over 3 years with him, who were confused, who were struggling, they didn't know what to believe. But the first thing he does is he goes for a walk, and not just any walk, but he's leaving Jerusalem to catch up with two, can I say it this way in all respect, no names? Two of the most insignificant characters in the entire Easter story. In fact, you could argue two of the most insignificant characters in the story of the scriptures as a whole. I mean, we don't even know one of them name. And we know Cleopas, but we don't even know his traveling companion. Could have been his wife, could have been his best friend. We don't even have a name for the other person. And Jesus tracks them down. Like, I don't know if he had to double time it or what, but he catches up to them. And it says that they were walking to a town called Emmaus. Now, do you know what's significant about Emmaus? Nothing. It was one of the most insignificant and small towns that historians and scholars today say we don't even know where it was on the map. And so I thought to myself, this is crazy. Jesus tracks down two of the most insignificant people that we never hear of again, headed in a direction to the most insignificant town that nobody knows where it was. Why in the world would he do all that? And I thought about it for a moment. And I thought to myself, isn't this so like Jesus though? I mean, if you know the story of Jesus, he was always doing this. He was a guy that could go into a room and everybody else would overlook the hurting person in the room, and Jesus would see him and run to that person. He's the one that in a society that would ostracize certain people or certain people with diseases that nobody would go near and touch, Jesus was the one that went to them and actually touched and loved them. He's the one that when everybody else in the religious environments would avoid all of the addicts and all of the lowest of the lowest, Jesus went and had dinner with them. I thought to myself, maybe this is exactly what Jesus would do. Maybe Jesus is the kind of person that will leave the 99 to go after the one. And the reason why I think it's good for us to know this, for some of you to understand that no matter what direction you're headed in life, and you might be here, and I'm glad that you are, but you might be here in person, but the reality is inside you've actually been running pretty hard away from God. You've been running away from a community. You've been running. And I just want you to hear this, no matter what direction you're headed. Can I say this? Jesus is pursuing you. He's pursuing you. And I know for some of you, maybe even hearing that and you're thinking about your life, and some of you would say, boy, that's really hard to believe. Because maybe you've gone through some situations where you were just in desperate need for God to show up, and maybe you prayed and it felt like nothing happened. Or the time when you needed God the most, it feels like all you got was silence. And I think sometimes it's really hard to see God in the middle of those moments. Some of you might have had a childhood that was so difficult, so rough, that it's really hard to see God in the midst of your trauma. Some of you maybe had a parent that left, walked out, abandoned you. So it's kind of hard to imagine that you have a heavenly Father that actually loves you and wants to be with you. Or maybe you've gone through a really painful divorce in your life, and someone didn't want you and they left, and it's hard to imagine that God would want you. Or maybe you've battled with depression or a mental health disorder, and no matter how much you wanted God to take it away, it feels like you just continue to wrestle with it. And it's like, I'm not sure that God is there. And yet I was thinking about the resurrection story and this little insignificant kind of moment Jesus has with these two no-name people making a cameo. And I thought to myself, is there a reason that Luke left this story in there? Could it be, just asking, is it possible that God has actually been there in some of the darkest moments and the worst valleys, but you couldn't recognize him? Because the story says that Jesus was right in front of them and they couldn't recognize him. I think there's sometimes we go through things and we wonder where God is. And a lot of times we don't realize he is right there. We just can't see him. I was reminded of this a couple months ago. It was a Sunday and I was at church. I was preaching. The previous few days, it rained just like insane, and then the temperature dropped, and it turned to freezing, and then snow. And so while we were in church, you might remember this, the weekend, the snow just dumped on us. I mean, winter wonderland. We had plans that after church, we were to meet up with family in Lancaster to celebrate a birthday. And so my wife and I, we were driving separately, and my wife is in her car, I'm in mine, she's ahead of me on the road, and we're talking on the phone, hands-free, Bluetooth, of course, through the car. And we're driving along, and I'm telling her, I'm like, man, these roads, they're not great. How's your vehicle doing? She has an all-wheel drive. She's like, mine's great. I'm like, well, mine's not great. And so I was being cautious. I want you to hear this, because some of you won't believe it, but I was actually going under the speed limit. Kind of a miracle in itself, just saying. Speed limit was 70. I'm going like 55, 60, that's cautious for me, trying to be cautious. And we're driving along, I'm driving along, talking to her on the phone, and I got to get off the freeway onto the business route to go into 33. And the moment I began to change lanes, I hit a patch of ice, black ice. And I'm in the middle of 33, going almost 60 miles an hour, and my car is beginning to spin out of control. And I tried correcting it. I tried everything you're supposed to do. Nothing is working. And all of a sudden, it took like a split second, and I realized I'm out of control. This is gone. And I'm on the phone with her. We're talking. And while we're on the phone, this starts to happen. I just interrupt and I say, oh no, oh shoot, oh shoot, oh shoot. In all transparency, it was something like that. I can't recall. You'd have to ask her if that was exactly the words I used, but sometimes you can't help it when you think your life is over, all right? Somebody's like, who let him be the pastor? I agree, I know. So I want you to get this, okay? I'm in the middle of 33. Car is spinning. 33. I see the guardrail coming up, 60 miles an hour, right? This is what happens. I tell you, I'm telling her, oh no, oh shoot, oh shoot, oh shoot. And then right before I hit the guardrail, I said, I'm dead. I did. I guess I was thinking like, you know, when you're like, it's coming, I'm done, I'm dead for like, I didn't know if I was gonna die, but I just was bracing for the impact. And the car just smacks into the guardrail, bounces off into the freeway, comes back to the berm, screeches, like just drags along the guardrail until it comes to a stop. You imagine my wife on the other end who doesn't see anything, but just hears, oh no, oh shoot, oh shoot, oh shoot. I'm dead, crunch. And she's like, what happened? Are you alive? Are you okay? What's going on? I said, I had to just a second or two of pausing, and one of the sensors in the car was going off, and it sounded like flatline. And it's just like, I said, I was in an accident. I think I'm okay. Do you need me to call 911? No, I think I'm all right. And so I was pinned on one side. I had to climb over the seat to get out of my car. To make a long story short, my car was totaled. I walked away without a single scratch. And I know that's not every story. And I've been in accidents where that doesn't happen just that way. And I imagine some of you have as well. But I think sometimes we have moments in life kind of like that. And we look back and we go, boy, I was so lucky. Maybe it wasn't luck. Maybe Jesus was there, I just couldn't recognize him. It's hard to see God in the middle of a difficult situation. Some of you, if I could just say this, some of you maybe doubt has so clouded your vision that it's hard for you to imagine that God is still with you. Some of you maybe have gone through something so painful, just felt like if God was there and real, he would have spared me from this pain. Then we think about the cross and we realize that God didn't even spare his own son from the pain, and maybe that's not an indication that he's not there. Or maybe some of you in a situation where you just lost all hope, like Cleopas and his friend. They said, we had hoped that he was the one. We had hoped that he was going to rescue us. But he died. and our hope died with him. And what they don't realize is they're literally saying this to the one who's risen. And I think sometimes Jesus can be right in front of us and we don't even see it. And what Jesus says to them, I found this kind of entertaining. It's a little direct. Hopefully it doesn't offend you. But listen to what Jesus says to them. Verse 25, he said to them, how foolish you are and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. Now, I know this feels a little bit harsh, kind of direct. She's like, gosh, how foolish are you? You guys kind of slow that you don't get it. And I know it does kind of almost seem a little bit rude, but you have to understand from Jesus' perspective, this is what he constantly came up against whenever he dealt with his own people. We're talking about Cleopas and his friend or his wife who probably grew up hearing the stories and the prophecies and singing songs in Saturday school about one day someone's coming, a Messiah, an anointed one that's gonna come and rescue us. I mean, they've heard all these stories, and Jesus is like, God has given you so many signs. How is it that you can't see who I am? And Jesus starts with Moses, and then he walks through all of the prophets. I imagine Jesus began to walk through and tell them, like, hey, do you remember like Micah said that there was one who was gonna come who would be born in Bethlehem? That would be born of a virgin? That's what Isaiah said. That would come from the line of the tribe of Judah, would come from the line of Judah? Yeah, this is what it said. Oh, and that he would also grow up and come out of Nazareth. Do you realize that's where I came from? I grew up in Nazareth. In the Old Testament, it says that he's going to do most of his ministry in kind of a small, insignificant region called Galilee. That's exactly where Jesus spent his time. And that one day he's going to ride into Jerusalem, not on a horse, which everybody would think a mighty general warrior who's coming to rescue all of Israel from Rome. But no, that he's going to ride into Israel on a donkey representing peace when he showed up. And that he was going to be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, it says in the Old Testament. That they're going to arrest him and they're gonna kill him in such a brutal way, Psalm 22 says, that his hands and his feet are gonna be pierced. And the Old Testament says that he's gonna actually die between criminals. And then they're gonna bury him in a borrowed tomb. And then on the third day, he's gonna be raised to life. And Jesus is saying, how do you miss all the signs? There's so many signs. Do you know a safe estimate scholars have come up with when counting through the Old Testament is that there are more than 300 prophecies about Jesus that were all fulfilled perfectly in him. Do you realize the odds of that happening? It's literally almost incalculable. Like some have tried, but the probabilities are so high, it's much, much, much higher than the number of elements in our universe. There was one mathematician, a doctor, his name was Dr. Peter Stoner, about 100 years ago or so, that actually tried to figure out the probability of one person fulfilling just 8 of the prophecies from the Old Testament about Jesus. Just 8. We're not going to try 300. Let's just do 8. Maybe that's more reasonable. And based on the number of people that lived in that day and all this, he basically came up with the probability that one person could fulfill 8 ancient prophecies given hundreds of years before him. And he said that he calculated the number came out to 1 times 10 to the 17th power, or that's 1 followed by 17 zeros. Like ridiculous. Here's the way he described it. He says, like taking a silver dollar, or many of them, stack them up 2 feet high, covering the entire state of Texas, with only one of them being marked, then give someone a blindfold and have them pick out the marked silver dollar on the first try. That's just 8. I gave you more than 8 today. You see, Jesus is kind of perplexed. He's like, I've given you so many signs. How much is it going to take before you'd finally believe? Before you'd finally see me for who I really am? And some of you, maybe you've been on a quest and maybe you've been struggling with your faith. Maybe you're like exploring and seeking and trying all kinds of stuff and just trying to find your way, and I appreciate that. But I want to tell you this, if you're holding out waiting for more information to finally believe there is a God or more information to finally believe in Jesus, my guess is there's no amount of information that will actually help you get there. Because I would argue you don't need more information, you need a revelation. You need to see someone. You don't need more information about someone. And that's exactly what Cleopas and his friend needed. A revelation of who was right in front of them. And so the story tells us, Luke tells us in verse 28, as they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he was going further. But they urged him strongly, stay with us, for it is nearly evening and the day is almost over. And so he went in to stay with them. And when he was at the table with them, he took the bread and he gave thanks and broke it and began to give it to them. It says then their eyes were opened and they recognized him. I love this. The moment they realized who was with them, Jesus disappeared. It's like, I'm done, I'm gone. Verse 32, it says, then they asked each other, they said to each other, were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures with us? There must have been something about that moment when they sat down to eat together. There must have been something about when Jesus picked up the bread and he gave thanks to his Father in heaven. And then he broke it and he gave it to him. It caused them to realize who was in front of them all along. I wondered if maybe they were in the crowd of 5,000 men plus women and children who saw him take the bread and give thanks to God and break it and then give it and feed the multitudes. Maybe they saw that miracle. Maybe they ate before. Or maybe the crowd of 4,000 men plus women and children where Jesus did the same thing. Or maybe they had heard of all the miracles and how he had touched those who were blind and their eyes were opened, or how the lame from birth and Jesus, one word and touch, they got up, carried their mat and went home. I don't know, but something shifted for them in this moment. And I wonder if it's because maybe things change when you don't think about Jesus doing miracles for everyone else, but Jesus doing a miracle for you. When you realize that Jesus didn't just come to give his body for the world, but he came to give his body for you and me. You see, I think we can go to church most of our lives. We can sit in church on Easter Sunday. We can go through all the motions. We can do all the things that we're supposed to do and hear all the stories and have all the information, but it not be real for us. And we can even say, oh, I believe in God, but can I ask you, when did you realize that Jesus came for you? When have you realized how desperately you needed Jesus to rescue you from your sin? Because the truth is, I discovered that at age 17. I'm that kid that grew up a son of pastors. I was in church from the moment I was born. I went to Christian school. I had verses memorized. I knew all the information there was to know about Jesus, but can I just tell you, I never really saw him for who he was until one day when I was 17 years old at a youth camp. And it was almost like he opened my eyes for the first time, and I realized Jesus didn't just come die for the whole world. Jesus came and he died for Tim. He died for my sin. And he wasn't just raised to life for the whole world. He was raised to life for Tim so that I could have hope. And in that moment, the moment I realized who I was and who he was, it changed the direction of my life. You know, all of us, can I say it this way? We're all going on a journey. All of us are walking through life. We're just going through life, and some of you might be here today, and you're just going through the motions. You're just doing life. You're just trying to work and raise a family and do all the things you're supposed to do. But can I ask you a question? When it comes to God, when it comes to who Jesus is, what direction are you headed? Because I've found that we're either walking toward him and with him, or we're walking away from him. And here's the thing, God loves you so much that he'll allow you to walk any direction you want. You can walk away from him. You say, I don't believe in you. You've maybe been hurt by people, hurt by others, hurt by the church, I want to ask you about Jesus, because we're all going in a direction, but I want you to hear this today, this Easter. He's pursuing you. You may not realize he's there in your journey. You might be running away. You might be living that prodigal life. You might be doing whatever you want, but I'm just telling you, he's actually right there pursuing you because he loves you. He cares for you. And the truth is this, you may never see him until you open your eyes in faith. Doesn't matter how much information. I'm not trying to prove something to you about Jesus and his resurrection. There's so much out there. What I've found is the moment you realize how much you need him, how much in our sinful state that we needed what God did by coming in the person of Jesus and dying for us, and then being raised to life so that we can have hope for eternity. Until you realize that, you'll never see him. But the moment you by faith turn toward him, that's the moment you'll see who he is. Would you all stand with me today? I would love for us to be able just to take a moment of personal reflection this Easter. So I just want to ask you if you just bow your heads for a moment, just maybe close your eyes, and maybe you're not someone who prays. Maybe you've never really done that before. That's okay. I just want you to put your thoughts maybe on your own life for a moment. I just want to ask you this question that I want to ask you to reflect on. What direction are you headed in life right now? Are you walking toward him? Maybe you've got a lot of questions. You know, you can have a lot of questions and still walk toward him. Or you find yourself walking further away from him. I just want you to hear this today. He's right there with you. He's pursuing you. He loves you. He's desperately in love with you. God loved you so much that he sent his son Jesus to this world to not die for the sins of this world, but to die for your sin and for my sin. Jesus came as the ultimate sacrifice to fulfill the just requirement of the law that I have broken. This is Jesus. But can I just tell you some good news today? He didn't remain dead. He didn't remain in a grave. He borrowed it. And the reason why God raised him to life, his son to life, is so that you and I could know that he has the power over death, over sin, over hell, that he actually has given us an opportunity to spend eternity with the King of Kings, with the Lord of Lords. It comes by faith when you receive him, when you accept him today.
Thanks so much for tuning into this message. I hope that it encouraged you and inspired your faith. If God is doing something in your life, would you take a moment and let us know? We want to connect with you and we want to be able to pray for you. All you have to do is shoot us an email to hello@thex.church, or you can always send us a DM on one of our social media platforms. And if you know somebody that would also be encouraged by this very message, why not take a moment and just share it with them right now? And as always, I want to say thank you to every single person who so generously financially supports this ministry so we can continue to get messages like these out to people all over the world. We believe God is building something special and you're a significant part of it. Until next time, have a great day.